Today's subject is a man whose voice rewrote protest, whose lyrics reshaped American poetry, and whose shadow still stretches across 6 decades of music history. Bob Dylan. He won Grammys, Oscars, and a Nobel Prize, all while staying just out of reach, a mystery wrapped in harmonica and haze. This is the story of the 6 children of Bob Dylan and what happened after the music faded. Maria Dylan, the witness who chose silence. She's the first to carry the Dylan name, though not by blood. Born Maria Lowndes in 1961, she spends her earliest years in quiet New York apartments, unaware that her life is about to be rewritten by music history. In 1965, Bob Dylan marries her mother Sarah at the height of his electric rebellion. That same year, he adopts Maria. The cameras flash for his concerts, not for the quiet legal papers that make her his daughter. While he scandalizes Newport and records Highway 61 Revisited, Maria learns to be invisible and observer in a home where the walls echo with verses the world will one day dissect. She doesn't grow up in fame, she grows up around it. When her father crashes his motorcycle in 1966 and retreats to Woodstock, Maria experiences a different Dylan than the one on album covers. At 5, she watches him scribble lyrics while pacing in socks. At 7, she learns to answer questions at school without giving too much away. When reporters camp near the property, she knows to stay away from windows. Her childhood becomes a study in the stillness, a careful dance between presence and disappearance. As the years pass, her father's music shifts from protest to poetry to gospel, and Maria shifts too from child to shadow. By her teens, she understands the cost of proximity to legend. When Blood on the Tracks releases in 1975, the public calls it a masterpiece. Maria hears something else. She knows the heartbreak is real. The lyrics are orient metaphors. They're fragments of conversations she heard through doors. Soon after, she stops using the Dylan name. Not out of anger. Out of instinct, she wants a life where no one asks what tangled up in blue really means. Maria never chases the spotlight. She marries quietly, chooses a life in art and education, far from the stage. She has children of her own. She never gives interviews. She never writes a memoir. In the story of Bob Dylan, she remains the first chapter, brief, essential, and unread aloud. But make no mistake, she was there when the myth was still forming. She watched it rise, and more importantly, she chose not to be consumed by it. Jesse Dylan, the director of Legacy, has the firstborn son of Bob Dylan, but he never touches a guitar, Jesse Byron. Dylan enters the world on January 6, 1966, in the same breath that his father's voice is changing the shape of modern music. Like a Rolling Stone is still fresh on the radio, Blonde on Blonde is months away. His birth doesn't make the papers, but his father's tour with the Hawks does. As a child, Jesse watches the chaos from a distance. His father is home, then not intense, then withdrawn. Conversations happen in fragments, usually late at night, sometimes in poetry. Jesse doesn't rebel. He observes and he learns, early, that stories have power, especially when told from behind the curtain. By the 1970s, as Dylan re-emerges with Blood on the Tracks, Jesse is old enough to understand that his father isn't just famous, he's untouchable strangers. Quote him, journalists chase him, and Jesse, like Maria before him, grows up behind layers of protection. But he doesn't resent the name. He studies it. He dissects the weight of legacy, not through chords, but through narrative. In college, he chooses film not to be seen, but to shape what others see. He directs early music videos for Elvis Costello and Lenny Kravitz, then branches out into commercials, short films, anything that allows him to move the camera instead of face it. In 2001, Jesse directs How High, a stoner comedy that surprises critics with its sharp timing and cultural bite. But comedy isn't the endgame. He founds Wallflowers, a production company with a conscience dedicated to healthcare storytelling, social justice campaigns, and nonprofit advocacy. His videos for the Yes We Can Obama campaign go viral. He crafts visual strategy for public health orgs, TED speakers, and tech reformers. Where his father wrote ballads about change, Jesse turns it into strategic media. Quietly without spectacle, he becomes one of the most influential image makers behind progressive causes of the 2000s. What he inherits from his father isn't the voice, it's the vision, the instinct to disrupt, without explaining why the sense that meaning is stronger when it's just out of reach. And unlike Bob, Jesse stays anchored, married, present, calm. He builds a family of his own, far from arenas and stage lights. People who work with him describe him as deliberate, generous, curious. In many ways, he's rewritten what it means to be Dylan. Less myth, more purpose. Anna Dylan, the daughter who disappeared gracefully. She is born on July 11, 1967, in the calm after the cultural storm. Just a year earlier, her father's motorcycle crash had forced him off stage and into hiding. By the time Anna arrives, Bob Dylan is no longer the lightning rod of Greenwich Village, as a bearded recluse in Woodstock, recording John Wesley Harding and reading the Bible in silence. From the very beginning, Anna's life runs parallel to her father's withdrawal. In 1970, when Anna is 3, Dylan releases Self-Portrait, a confusing, self-effacing double album that bewilders critics and distances him further from expectations. At home, Anna watches an artist unmake his image while she quietly forms her own identity in the margins. Unlike her older siblings, there's no record of early schooling or public anecdotes. Her childhood years from 1970 through 1977 unfold entirely outside the public eye. By age 10, her parents' marriage is crumbling. Dylan's Desire, 1976, becomes his last great romantic epic before the collapse, and in 1977, the divorce finalizes Anna's 9. She stays with Sarah. The house is quieter, the press has moved on through her teenage years in the early 1980s. Bob Dylan shifts again into Born Again, Christianity, gospel albums, and renewed touring. But Anna never follows that arc. She's in high school, then college, while her father is on the road with Slow Train Coming and Saved. If she ever attends a show, it's never recorded. If she ever speaks publicly, it's never printed. Her presence is defined by absence. In a decade of oversharing, she becomes a rare kind of anonymity. By the 1990s, when Dylan wins a Grammy for Time Out of Mind, 1998, Anna is in her 30s. The world is rediscovering her father. Biographers are trying to map his every move. Still, Anna stays off the page. Unlike Jesse, who directs films, or Jakob, who begins topping charts, Anna never steps forward. She doesn't deny her lineage. She simply lives elsewhere emotionally, geographically, artistically. Rumors suggest she may have worked in education or the arts. Nothing is confirmed. She avoids all documentation, leaving behind no trail to follow. In 2016, when Bob Dylan receives the Nobel Prize in Literature, cameras zoom in on his empty chair in Stockholm. Reporters ask where he is. No one asks where Anna is, and that's how she would want it. She turns 49 that year. Her life measured not in headlines, but in decades of deliberate stillness today, in her mid-50s. Anna Dylan remains a quiet cipher. She was never erased, just never open to the world. Where her father found freedom in constant reinvention, Anna found hers in staying hidden, and in doing so, she became something rare. A Dylan with no mythology, only a life. Sam Dylan, the quiet architect behind the curtain. Hess born on July 30th, 1968, just as his father is shedding his folk messiah skin for something warmer, more measured. Bob Dylan's Nashville skyline is taking shape country tones. Softer vocals, fewer riddles. Sam's early years are marked by the same retreat that shaped Anna and Maria before him. But by 1974, when he's 6, the silence is cracking. Dylan hits the road again with the band for the legendary Before the Flood tour. Maria is a teen, Jesse is entering school. But Sam, still a child, watches his father pack bags, leave for months, and reappear changed. That same year, Bob records Blood on the Tracks, and the emotional strain in the household becomes harder to miss. The divorce comes 3 years later. Sam is 9. Unlike Jesse, who absorbs the legacy, or Maria, who steps away from it, Sam hovers somewhere in between, Through the 1980s, as Dylan spirals through his gospel phase and erratic tours, Sam grows quietly. He's a teenager when Infidels comes out in 1983, and his father's presence is more spectral than steady, but Sam isn't bitter. He adapts, he becomes fluent in the art of detachment, learns to compartmentalize legacy from life. While some children of icons rebel, Sam doesn't. He develops a low-profile intelligence, a preference for systems, privacy, and long-term stability. By the early 1990s, Sam is in his 20s. While Jakob is launching the Wallflowers and Jesse is filming comedies, Sam reportedly works behind the scenes media, logistics, perhaps legal, perhaps production. His name never appears in the trades, but inside the family, he becomes known as the one who shows up when Bob Dylan wins a Grammy for Time Out of Mind in 1998. It's unclear if Sam attends the ceremony, but family sources say he's there for birthdays, hospital stays, and moments when fame is irrelevant. In the 2000s, Sam marries Stacy Hochheiser. They have children, he moves between coasts but never into the spotlight. While Jesse shapes political media and Jakob earns platinum records, Sam remains a constant in the background. His role isn't performative, it's structural. When Bob Dylan is awarded the Nobel Prize in 2016, Sam is 48. The world speculates about who might accept the medal. Sam says nothing, just a quiet presence behind a man whose legacy often dwarfed the lives around him. Today, Sam Dylan is in his mid-50s, still private, still loyal, still invisible to the public, but essential to the private world of a complicated family. He may never write a song or direct a film, but among Dylan's children, he's the one who most understands the value of structure. Jakob Dylan, the son who sang without imitation. Heads born on December 9, 1969, the last child of Bob and Sarah Dylan. Jakob Luke Dylan enters a household already crowded with voices, half-written songs, and invisible boundaries. His father has just released Nashville Skyline, softening his sound and image. At home in Malibu, Jakob grows up with a man who is more myth than dad, more lyric than conversation. But unlike his older siblings, Jakob doesn't retreat from the aura. He studies it, then carves out a path that bends around it without ever copying it. In the early 1980s, Jakob attends the private Windward School in Los Angeles. Has quiet, artistic, understated. When his father wins a Grammy for Gotta Serve Somebody in 1980, Jakob is 10 and already writing poems no one will read. His teenage years bring guitars, skateboards, and growing clarity. He wants to make music, but not like his father. In 1989, he and some friends form a band called The Apples, which soon becomes the Wallflowers. They signed to Virgin Records in 1991. The debut album gets modest attention, no comparisons yet, no real weight. But Jakob isn't chasing stardom, he's learning how to build something slowly. Then 1996 changes everything. Bringing Down the Horse becomes a surprise hit. Singles like One Headlight and Sixth Avenue. Heartache dominate radio, and suddenly Jakob Dylan is a name people say aloud. Not as Bob's son, but as Jakob. He earns 2 Grammy Awards. He appears on magazine covers, but he rarely talks about his father. In interviews, he's polite but evasive, always shifting the conversation back to the work. I didn't grow up in the spotlight. He once says, I grew up around someone who avoided it. His distance isn't denial, it's strategy. Through the 2000s, Jakob builds a steady, respected career. He releases solo albums, Seeing Things 2008, Women Plus Country 2010, and gains praise for his lyrical precision, and worn in voice critics inevitably compare him to Bob. But the tones are different. Off stage, he keeps things even tighter. Jakob marries Paige Dylan, a screenwriter, in the early 1990s. They raise 4 sons together in Los Angeles, far from the music industry bubble. He rarely brings his children to events. He doesn't do reality shows, memoirs, or brand deals. He doesn't even appear on his father's albums. He has his name, his sound, and his space, and he protects them all fiercely. In 2018, Jakob produces and stars in Echo in the Canyon, a documentary exploring the Laurel Canyon music scene. It's a quiet masterpiece, elegant, reverent, deeply personal. Without saying so, he makes peace with his lineage by honoring others today. Jakob is in his mid-50s still recording. Still touring, still careful, he's managed the impossible. To live under one of the heaviest names in music and never be buried by it. Desiree Dennis Dylan, the secret that chose the name. She's born on January 31st, 1986 in a small Los Angeles hospital, the product of a secret marriage and a secret life. Her mother, Carolyn Dennis, is a gifted backing vocalist who's worked with legends like Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson and with Bob Dylan. What no one knows, not even many of Dylan's closest fans or biographers, is that he and Carolyn had married 7 months earlier, in June 1986, in private. And when Desiree Gabrielle Dennis Dylan enters the world, she becomes not just the youngest of Dylan's children, but the most hidden. Her early childhood is wrapped in absolute silence. Between 1986 and 1992, while Dylan tours with Tom Petty and records albums like Oh Mercy, he's also raising a daughter far from public view. Desiree grows up in a modest home, surrounded by musicians and artists, but never by press. She attends school like any other girl. No one whispers her name in tabloids because no one knows she exists. Even her half-siblings aren't publicly linked to her. To the outside world, Dylan is a solitary artist living alone in Malibu. The truth is something else entirely. In 1992, Bob and Carolyn quietly divorce. No legal battle, no custody fight, no paparazzi outside the courthouse. Desiree is 6 years old. Carolyn raises her with structure and grace, keeping her away from the gravitational pull of celebrity. Still, Dylan remains in her life more than the public will ever know. Just two people who know who they are to each other, even if the world does not. It isn't until 2001, when journalist Howard Sounds publishes Down the Highway, The Life of Bob Dylan, that the secret breaks. The book reveals the marriage, the child. The quiet unraveling. Fans are stunned. Some accuse Dylan of hypocrisy. Others marvel at how deeply he protected her. Desiree, now 15, doesn't respond publicly. She doesn't have to. As she grows into adulthood, Desiree makes a quiet choice. She takes back the Dylan name. Not for attention, but for ownership. She attends school under her real surname. Later, she becomes active in community organizations, reportedly supporting LGBTQ+ rights and advocacy in California. She keeps her public presence minimal. No viral videos, no music career, no memoir. By 2016, when her father receives the Nobel Prize in Literature, Desiree is 30. She doesn't appear in interviews or on red carpets. She isn't mentioned in speeches, but she doesn't need to be. She has already chosen where she stands. Close enough to remember, far enough to remain her own person today, Desiree Dennis Dylan lives in the modern world without being consumed by its noise. She didn't inherit the stage. But when the truth of her story came out, she didn't run from it. She simply took the name, stood up straight, and lived 6 children. No press tours, no red carpets. They didn't fight over a fortune or live off a name. Bob Dylan gave them mystery. He gave them silence. And in their own ways, they honored both, not by echoing his voice, but by choosing when, how, or whether to be heard at all. If you found this breakdown powerful and want more deep dives into the hidden lives of Hollywood's forgotten children, subscribe to Legacy Uncovered. Your support brings these invisible stories to light. Thanks for listening.